welcome to the second video on creativity and money. This video will sort of outline money mechanics. It's an education that we never got in school, so we'll take a look at this and see how it affects our creativity. This is fundamental in trying to develop a higher conscious awareness about how money works, to have a more harmonious relationship with prosperity. As with anything else, knowing the source of a problem is the first step in how to fix things. So without further ado, let's get to it. Hope you enjoy. Let's again take a step back and look at all of these mechanics. The issuing of money is controlled by the Federal Reserve. Of course, I'm talking of the United States because, again, the American dollar is the base currency worldwide. The Federal Reserve has nothing to do with any governmental federal control. The Federal Reserve is a private central bank, and it basically dictates the world economy and declares by decree that US fiat currency is the means of exchange and is not backed by anything like gold or silver like it was prior to 1970. It's only backed by the faith and trust that the federal government has the ability to pay for the astronomical debt it already has at over $35 trillion. It creates currency out of thin air and sells it to the US government at interest. The US government then issues bonds that it sells back to the Federal Reserve, which is basically an act of futility. Now, the reason why the mechanics of this system isn't taught in school is that we would realize that it's a system of control to keep us in permanent debt or in perpetual financial slavery. It's the greatest scam ever perpetrated on humanity, and solving this will most likely solve at least half of the world's problems, and most likely 80% of crimes and wars. We think it is totally normal, I'm repeating myself, because it's important that upon the purchase of a $500,000 home financed by the banks at 7.5% for 25 years, that it will cost us $1.1 million. We find it perfectly normal that the bank will make more money than the contractor that labored to build your home just by shuffling a few pieces of paper and lending us money that was created out of thin air. What could you have done with that extra $600,000 if this money had been lent interest-free? And our sheepish minds had been trained to ask ourselves if this was at all possible. Many of you might say, oh, if there's no interest on our money, what's going to happen on my 401k and how will I be able to retire? Well, if you're asking yourself this question, you should also ask yourself how the interest-bearing monetary system costs you in everything you buy, and you would realize that you would be prospering in a much more significant way. Furthermore, the people that most benefit from the interest system are the people that control the money, namely the banking cartels. When the money is invented out of thin air, they don't give it to you. They give it to the banks, which turn around and lend it to you at interest. Now this, again, seems like an unbelievable scam to me. Also, you need to consider that 2/3 of the world population don't have enough savings to even hope of ever getting any interest returns. So the interest system benefits the wealthy and their puppets at our expense. Now, if you go to ask questions to your bank manager on why banks have to charge interest, you might get answers like there's a risk and a cost of capital, that banks need to cover the risk associated with lending and the cost of obtaining the capital they lend. When banks create money through lending, they assume the risk that the borrower might default on the loan, and they incur costs related to managing that risk. Now, when you analyze the procedures that are put in place in all banks, they don't just lend out money to anybody. They verify if you've got a steady job. So the risk is mitigated. So is there really that big a risk in lending money out? Same for insurance companies. Insurance companies have experts evaluating risks and determining exactly how they should charge you for protecting you against XYZ disaster. And when there is a natural disaster and they're shortchanged because there's so many claims, they readjust the risk evaluation in the next year or 2 or 3. So you're always the one paying for whatever risk they have. Insurance companies and banks are almost never shortchanged. Of course, there is a history of banks going under because of different economic situations. But most of the time is because of mismanagement, like in 2008, where the banks became so greedy that they lent money on derivative product because they knew they could make more and more money. Guess who bails them out? If there's that much risk involved, go in any downtown city and look at the names of the companies that own the tallest skyscrapers. They're almost all banks or insurance companies. So the question arises, if they can afford the biggest pieces of real estate in any city, are they taking on that much risk? Another thing your bank manager might tell you is that banks are into profit making. They are a profit-oriented institution. So they charge interest on loan is a primary way for banks to generate revenue and make a profit. Now, my vision of a money system that belongs to we the people is that nobody should be making a profit on a tool that really belongs to us. And that's where all of the perception of this being a huge scam comes from. It doesn't make any sense that someone that is profiting from us putting money in the bank that is making such huge profits. Banks make billions of dollars of profit with your money, and they give you back peanuts, essentially. Furthermore, if you study the fractional reserve system of banks, they need to, according to law, hold only a very small percentage, something like 10 to 20% of your money in the bank, and they can lend out the rest. And they actually lend out more than they actually have in their coffers. And from that perspective, the money you put in the bank becomes a liability for them. It's not an asset really, because if you ask for your money, they don't have it, which is why it's so complicated. If you deposit $1 million in a bank account and the next week you want to go over and get $20,000 cash to give to your family, they think you're doing something illegal, and they'll give you all kinds of lip, and you have to fill out X number of paperwork so that you're even allowed to take out in cash your own money. Another aspect of why your bank manager needs to make money is the time value of money, is the concept that the money available today is worth more than the same amount of money in the future. This is, related to the fact that inflation and purchasing power exist and erodes the value of the money over time. So by charging interest, banks aim to offset the effects of inflation and ensure that the repayment received in the future retains its value. Now, do you have in your life a mechanism by which the time value of money and inflation protects you? The banks have invented a way that they never lose any money. You lose money over time, your purchasing power is affected, and we have to be consciously aware that the reason why inflation is what it is partly or entirely due to the interest-bearing monetary system. So even though creativity is not money dependent, it's important to realize that the main tool to exchange our creativity is controlled by a handful of greedy people, and that we need to take back what is rightfully ours. We can do that by exploring various organizations that provide interest-free money or loans to support various initiatives. Believe it or not, there are organizations that do lend out money interest-free. These organizations are non-profit, and of course there are a panoply of people that are very well off that explore philanthropic endeavors, and they issue grants and interest-free loans to private sector companies that have innovative business ideas, whether they be in agriculture, renewable energy, and other sectors. Additionally, they invest in entrepreneurs with innovative models for tackling poverty, providing interest-free loans and grants, and these organizations aim to stimulate economic growth and development through financial support without interest charges. They are the precursors to a new reality around money. So explore those and do what you can by contacting congressmen and women to be able to try and explore the possibilities of shifting societal opinion around money. It's all a question of perspective. Thought is creative. We can use money the way that is the most creative. And once we do that, if we have a certain percentage of people that think the same way, change is inevitable. The next video will outline how we got to the mess we're in with our present monetary system by taking a look at its perverted history. Do you know that the American government has issued interest-free money several times in its past history? Find out how this happened and what type of impact it had on the people in video 3. Like and subscribe if you enjoy these videos on creativity, and look for the next videos on creativity and money.